Good evening. My name is Jack Clark. I'm currently the chair of the Board of Trustees of the California State University System, and it's my honor to just welcome you all here tonight. And I'd also like to just note my colleagues who are here. Trustee Raji Brar is here. And Trustee Yami Rodriguez is here, but she's probably holding court outside, so we'll welcome her when she comes in. Thank you all for being here. I know we're all fired up. We're ready to share the story of the CSU and its impact. And I can say, and I mean this really, because it was a couple of years ago, I came out to Washington, D.C. to try and convince this person who had a very good job in Washington, D.C., who really was resisting the job of chancellor, who happens to be with us tonight as the chancellor of the California State University System. She's our students' greatest champion. She's a fierce defender of the CSU's mission, and tonight she will join a conversation with one of our greatest allies, and we're in for a treat. And Chancellor, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Chair Clark. Good evening. Buenas noches. You know, Chair Clark, I have to say a story about Chair Clark. When he came to talk to me, he used every trick in the book. He even gave me this amazing piece of publication of his grandfather who went to Tuskegee. And here he gives me this book. And I go, oh, thank you. I'll read it and give it back to you. He said, no, you can have it. You deserve this. Because he was saying, I'm going to get this woman to change her mind. And he did. So the Chair Clark, you know, he's wise, he's steady, he has principled leadership, and he has unwavering support, not only for me, but for the CSU, our trustees, our students, faculty, and staff, and of course, the 23 presidents in the system. Please join me in giving Chair Clark a round of applause. He already started talking about our story and what a story we have to share. We are the nation's largest, most diverse, most consequential four-year university system in the country. No university transforms lives at the scale and elevates families and communities at the scale that the CSU does. You understand it because you're living it every day. We are America's shining model of inclusive excellence, and its undisputed leader in what? Driving social mobility. And no system is even close. We add, think about this, we add every year between 120,000 and 130,000 graduates. Graduates who are diverse, highly educated, first generation, low income, students of color, students from all walks of life. And 1 in California employees and 1 in 20 employees across the country holds a degree from where? The CSU. We have over 4 million alumni. And these alumni enrich our communities in countless ways, strengthening our society, economy, strengthening our communities, and strengthening our democracy. So tonight, we are very fortunate to be joined by someone who deeply understands the power our public universities hold in driving our nation's economic development and ensuring its stability and the prosperity. Paul Glastris, who I had the honor of serving on the Gates Commission on Higher Education a couple of years ago, is currently editor-in-chief at Washington Monthly, which has been his professional home for the past 18 years. He previously served as a White House speechwriter under Bill Clinton and was a correspondent for U.S. News and World Report for more than a decade. Last fall, working with Rob Wolf, he wrote a powerful article advocating for a new definition of higher education excellence entitled A Different Kind of College Ranking. It called for a ranking, listen carefully, it called for a ranking that measures what universities do for our country and not for themselves. Paul, we're all for that. And I think you are among your people tonight. So thank you so much for being with us tonight. I look forward to hearing your insights and our conversation. So I'm going to start a question and then I'm going to walk out over. How would you describe the state of American higher education in this troubling, uncertain, and unprecedented moment? Paul, it's all you. Join in welcoming Paul Garcia.
Thank you. That's a really good question. I thought I was going to ask the questions, but
No, I'm playing the CSU Oprah tonight.
So when Dr. Garcia, Millie, and I were on this Gates Post-Secondary Value Commission, there were it was probably 30 of us on the commission, and then a whole lot of researchers. And, certain people stand out. Certain people just naturally lead. Absolutely a driving force in that report, which I still think is going to define what value is in higher education for years to come. And I think to answer your question, higher education is deeply challenged in a whole host of ways, some of them partisan, some of them rooted in basic economics and the politics of states, some of it in their own culture and structure. But all of those pressures are pointing to the value proposition that we came together with others in this sector to lay out in that Gates report. And so I think it's a very, very difficult time from what I can tell. You guys, you are in the maelstrom. I look from the side, from the outside. But, the pressures are also an opportunity to get to where we all want to go.
So let's talk a little bit about where do we want to go. And of course, I have a vision, and you can share or disagree with me on my vision. I think they all know that my vision is that not only are our students getting this amazing education through our faculty and staff who are really dedicated to our students, they get great support services, but we want every one of our students to have an experience in a career that they dream of, and that by the time they graduate, they have had internships, experiences, et cetera, in the area. And then we help them enter that career or go to graduate school or take a year off. But that we know that every one of our 461,000 students, once they graduate, those 120 crossing or 130,000 crossing that stage, we know where they are going and what they are doing. What do you think about that, and how would you help us to think about that as we go through this?
Well, again, to come back to the work we did together, we began thinking that value was measured in income, which was a good place to start because let's face it, 90% of college students take the plunge in order to get a decent job and support themselves. But then we bumped into the reality that there were quite great disparities between different kinds of students and different kinds of colleges and different kinds of majors. So we had to factor that in. And then we ran into the fact that the disparities of income pale in comparison to the disparities of wealth. Mm-hmm. So we had to factor that in. And then we wrestled with the fact that as important as economic outcomes are, we don't just educate, we don't sink hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayer money into the higher education system just so that people can get jobs. And if you look on the founding documents of just about any college in America, it's going to say, we manufacture citizens, right? We want our students to become involved, contributing members to society, to their democracy. So you have to factor that in your ROI. So it gets very complicated, but we figured it out. And you know, I'll just say that this is how the Washington Monthly ranks colleges. We have 3 buckets of metrics. One of them is upward mobility, and it's all the factors you were talking about. The second is research. Are universities creating the scholarship and scholars that drive human flourishing and economic growth? And the third is service. Are they giving back to their society by voting, by working in community service, serving in the Peace Corps, becoming teachers, and so forth? I still think that's a pretty good way of looking at it, and that's why we've stuck with it for 20 years. But you know, a lot of colleges don't measure up, and the beauty of the CSU, and you hinted at that, CSU does very well on our rankings. I just want to say, in a sense, dominates the rankings, the best bang for the buck rankings and others. So being here, though I'm a journalist and I'm used to somewhat adversarial conversations, this is not one, because you guys are heroes by our own metrics.
Well, thank you for that. So, you know, as you look at the CSU and you're saying, you know, we're well positioned to do what we need to do and to serve our student body, what about public confidence in higher ed and how that's going down? And how do we work together with you and other media outlets and community to change the narrative about what we do, not anybody else, how the CSU is making that impact that you see in your rankings?
Well, I was going to ask you the same question.
Well, you start first.
All right.
They know about me.
So I think, and we're talking about this before. Higher education gets defined in the public mind, in the mind of the media, in the mind of influential decision makers by the elite. We did a little reporting recently. We did a Google search of Harvard University in the New York Times. 1,000 mentions in 12 months of Harvard University in non-sports related stories. That is more mentions than the 10 largest universities in the country. So Florida State University with 75,000, or Arizona State with at least that many, get 1/10 the mentions of Harvard, which has 7,500 students. So that is the environment in which regional publics have to deal. And the sins of the elite are visited upon all other colleges. And that is a big source of the decline, in my opinion, of public confidence in higher education. There are other reasons, but I would be curious what you all know when you drill down in the public, when you're talking to decision makers. Are you able to distinguish your record, your way of engaging in the world, your outcomes from the elite universities that folks are so mad at?
So, you know, all of us have been on the Hill today, and what we heard, I'm sure you all heard, return on investment. What is the return on investment in our programs, right? And we certainly have the data, but we don't have the data for all our institutions, and we have to get there. I said that's number one. Number two, when you talk to families, they want to know, what is my family member going to do when they graduate? And what is important is that 84% of our Pell students graduate with zero debt. That's incredible,
That is an incredible figure.
right? And we have to be loud and bold and proud that we are doing that. And that we have to work with people like yourselves. And we have to work within our communities. I am a big proponent that we look at the public as a monolith. But we should be talking in communities, in their language and space, about the power of the CSU and show them that our place is a place for their family members and even themselves, for people who need to upskill, people who need to change careers, as well as the students that are coming to school, because the traditional age is over. It's, as you know, very small percentage.
Yeah.
So how do we reinvent ourselves to take care of all the people that are in our communities that need higher ed? And how do we do that differently? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, these are the questions you were doing it, and I'm writing about it. I'm curious how, look, you have one of the toughest jobs of any college leader in the country right now. You've got problems at home, problems in Washington. You inherited a great system, but a system under stress. How do you navigate? How do you, look, the success of your system is based in part on a commitment by California that goes back decades to fund your regional public universities as they do. And subsequent presidents and chancellors who have funded wraparound services, help for the least prepared students so that they can get to graduation. Mm-hmm. That's on the cutting block.
Right.
How do you maintain or improve on your record at a time of shrinking resources? Right. I think that is the heart of the question that a lot of systems are facing, and I know you're thinking about and taking steps on. It seems to me that the money's not going to come from the sky. It's going to have to come, at least in part, internally. That means change, and change is painful. And you know, I've read a little bit about what's going on, but I'd love to hear more about what your plans are.
So I think what we need to look at is who are our students in our community. And in our strategic plan, we're putting our students first. They are at the very center. We are in the middle of preparing a strategic plan for the system. Every university in our system will do it in their way, in their unique way, in their neighborhoods. But it is about the students. How do they work with their communities? How do they work with the businesses, not-for-profits, all the communities, in creating those partnerships? As I look at one of our business women board members, and how do we create those partnerships? How do we create opportunities for our students to experience what it's like to work in a profession of whatever kind? And then we have to think about, we have to look internally. How do we do much more shared services at the administrative side so that we save money and use AI to save that money? How do we use our weekends and our evenings? Because there are institutions across the country that are doing weekend colleges for those people who are working. How do we do that? How do we change? How do we really talk to the people that we serve to see what is it that they need? And then have the faculty and staff and students really structure that and work with the president and their vice presidents to make sure that they are responding. And how do we do things across the system? I always go back to French. They tell me French is, not too many people are taking French. Why can't we have a system-wide French degree? That people who want to take French can take it. Because I took French during COVID for 2 years, online. And I have to tell you, I was in France and I was able to talk. Now, I may have done a bad accent, it may have been Spanish, but they understood me. They understood me, and I was speaking French, and they were telling me I had a good accent, so I believed them. But I think those are the kinds of things that we have to be ready to change in order to meet the needs of the people that we say we want to serve.
Let me ask you another question on the subject.
Now you're taking over the interview, but go ahead.
You asked me the question about what can CSU individually by campus and the system-wide do to assure the public that an investment of their time and money will lead to the career of their dreams. I'm fascinated by the expansion of paid internships in this country. The Washington Monthly, I got my one and only internship in life was an unpaid internship at the Washington Monthly. Changed my life. Not everybody can afford an unpaid internship, certainly not in DC today. Back then, it was cheap to live here. How can, do you have the aspiration for every CSU student to get a paid internship in a field that connects with their career goals, and how do you get there?
First of all, that would be my dream. If I could wave a magic wand, that would be my dream, that every student could try a career, have a paid internship where they would learn. This is not new. This has been going on since I was a student. I had a paid internship in fashion, and I loved it. So this is not new. But it means that we have to prepare ourselves to have individuals within the programs that have the expertise to reach out to those areas of study so that business people would talk to business people, technology people would talk to technology companies. Really reach out. Reach out to the Amazons, which I know we have a partnership with Amazon. Reach out to Statler Brothers, that I know San Bernardino has a partnership. Reach out to those companies that are looking for diversity of students that we have. Look at nursing. People need nurses desperately. Our ASN to BSN, we have to expand it. And what do we have? We have nurses who are not only competent as nurses, they are culturally and socially experienced. And our communities need that. Health professions. So yes, that's my dream. That's the work that I can dream about. But it's the faculty and the staff and the presidents and the vice president taking a hold of this and moving that forward.
And who pays for that? How do we get the funds? And let me just suggest, it's not going to happen if it has to come only from the university.
Absolutely. So you tell me where the money would come from. Since you give us your ideas of where the money would come from.
So, giving away my hand here, but we're working on this as a story in the Washington Monthly. All of Washington is demanding a better ROI from the higher ed system. I can't think of a better investment from the federal government than to put in some skin in the game to make paid internships a universal experience in the college. But the federal government's never going to pay the whole thing, right? So I think universities have to have some skin in the game, and I think employers have to have some skin in the game. So I think that if you can create a bargain where everybody pitches in, because everybody's benefiting, you can make it happen. That's my
Okay, I'm going to add one more, because I think you've hit all of them except for one. Philanthropy, as far as foundations are concerned. Utilize it, these foundations are looking for scale. Who is doing this at scale? And if we could get some institutions to start piloting and have some results, then we go to the foundations and say, look at what we're doing. We can really do more of this. We're getting money for the federal government. We're going to have put this amount of money. And foundations, we would like you to help us to bring it up to scale.
Yeah, you get them into the corner.
You get them,
dare
right.
them to say no.
Right. And I think that's the way to do it. Because when we had that Gates, what they were looking for is scale scale, not one institution. They don't give money to one institution anymore. They give money to individuals that are bringing together multiple institutions. And we could do that in the CSU easily. So that's my answer to you on that. So student debt, we talked about. How do we help policymakers and university leaders learn how
To dominate the discourse is very, very hard to fight. We've been fighting it for 20 years. That's why we do what we do. I used to work at US News. The more I looked at the rankings that were paying my mortgage, the less I liked them. We created something completely different in order to change the dialogue and about what constitutes excellence in higher education. I still think that's an uphill battle. I think we are moving slowly towards it. And I think visits like the ones you're having now with lawmakers, I hope you're meeting with some journalists. I hope you're shaming the journalists into covering what you're doing. I think there's never been a better time for you to make your case to my fellow members of the press. And you're going to strike out more than you have hits, but you got to keep getting up to the plate. Where you're at is where higher education will be. You are where the puck is going. The world just doesn't know it yet. All the pressure from the foundations is moving in this direction. The public, to the extent that they understand, would be behind you. But it is hard to get your time in the sun when people talk about college, they think of Columbia, right? Or Yale, and they don't think about Fullerton. And they should be. 90% of the students are coming from your sector. The vast majority of diverse first-generation students are graduating from your colleges. The plurality of BAs are coming from your colleges. The elite educate, depending on how you define it, 5 to 15%
right.
of undergrads. Regional public universities, closer to 40%.
That's right.
You dwarf every other sector. These are facts that just need to be gotten out in every way you can.
Well, I will remind our presidents and their teams that one of the things I learned as president of ASCII was they said, your presidents never come to our offices when they're in Washington. They should be coming into our offices with their story. What is it that's successful? You should be going into Inside Higher Ed. You should be going to Univision. You should be going to the Chronicle of Higher Ed. Bring your communications people with you, and if you need help, Patty Navalta and Greg Sachs are here. We really need to be flooding these offices with the powerful programs that I cited, some of your programs today on the Hill, talking about the success stories of your programs. And if we're out of sight, out of mind because we're on the West Coast, remember that. So when we're here, we've got to make ourselves known, not only to the people on the Hill, but to the media that is out here. So just another thing. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to ask the audience what questions you may have. You've been doing this for 18 years, and you've seen many programs across the country in higher education. Are there any that stand out to you that we can learn from? Because the other thing we need to do as educators is learn from others. What's out there that you're seeing that we may have not thought about?
There's some very interesting models out there, as you know. I'm a big fan of Paul Quinn College in Dallas, a tiny HBCU that was just about to go under, and a very dynamic president named Michael Sorrell took it over, ended the football program and planted an organic farm on the football field, just as a kind of statement that things are changing. And he's turned that college into a urban work college. A little bit like the Northeastern concept where students spend are cycling through employers, getting credit for their work, and kicking over some of the earnings to support their tuition. Berea College is a great example of a rural work college. Very interesting model. Bunker Hill Community College in Boston really struggled with the fact that the students that were getting the best paid internships tended to be suburban white students who were interested in the jobs that were being offered, which was Fidelity and some of the defense contractors, where some of the first generation and diverse students, that wasn't really what they were interested in, or a lot of them. And so they had to work real hard to corral much smaller companies, nonprofits, government agencies, and hospitals and so forth to say, look, a lot of our students are looking for careers in those areas. You've got to open up some paid internships.
Right.
And some of these entities didn't have a whole lot of extra money. So it was a struggle, but they managed over time to make the paid internship look like the student body. So those are just two examples.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to turn to the audience. Questions? Who'd like to ask a question? Go ahead, Michael Spagna, interim president of Humboldt State.
Hi, nice to meet you.
There's a mic, there's a mic.
Nice to meet you, and with full disclosure, I've been in the CSU system for 35 years. Wow. Professor, administrator. First 20 years, our system really prided itself, rightfully so, on access and affordability. Last 15 years, it's been about completion with our GI 2025 initiative. We're moving into a new frontier that I think you're alluding to, which is having students thrive. So on the other side of this, I want to hear some thoughts about upskilling, reskilling, meaning that it's not enough to confer degrees. What do we do on the other side of it to support students in industry? And the larger notion there is if industry is working with government and us, they see the vitality of a lifelong commitment to education for adult learners, conferral of degrees beyond that. So just some thoughts about that, because this seems like the place that's next for us on the horizon.
I think it's next for you. I think it's next for the discourse, as they call it, in higher ed reform. You're seeing more and more nonprofit think tanks, foundations saying completion, we're winning the completion battle. It's moving in the right direction after a lot of years. Where things break down, where you see underemployment of college students, where you see a decline in average public support for colleges, is these kids are graduating, they don't have a plan, they don't have connections. Look, if you come from an upper middle class family and you get a degree in English at your university, mom and dad and your neighbors and the people you went to church with, they all know somebody. They can get you interviews. They can set you up for an internship. You come from a first generation family where everybody works with their hands and they can get you an interview at a trucking company, but that's like not what you're looking for, right? You don't have the network. It falls on the backs of universities to figure out how to create those job networks. And I think what you're also alluding to is over the long term, right? I mean, how does Harvard have a $70 billion endowment? Because their alumni write big checks.
That's right.
20 years from now, I hope that your university has such a grateful alumni that they're going to help underwrite the next generation by writing not those kind of checks, but what they can afford.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Let me go to the next question over here, Judge. Oh, and then over there. No, go ahead, Judge.
Okay. I'm not an academic. I've been a judge here in Washington, D.C. for the last 30 years. Okay?
Nice to meet you.
I'm a graduate of the San Jose State University. What do you guys have? It's interesting to me, right? I've had Dr. Nagais here and my president of San Jose. I'm on the alumni board of San Jose State. And I go back once every 3 months to the board meetings. And I've managed to give internships to a number of students from San Jose State and from the region. Born and raised in Vallejo, California. And I didn't have an opportunity to do everything that I could do, but had it not been for the EOP program at San Jose State, had it not been for football and ROTC, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I'm a bush of points to the bench. Y'all don't hold that against me, okay? But it's interesting to me when you talk about paid internships. Judicial internships, we have more money in Washington, D.C.
Right.
However, all the kids that I've given internships from San Jose State, right, we can write letters for them to go on to law school, medical school, wherever they want to go. That is invaluable. That is invaluable. I guess my question would be, Chancellor, to the two of you, would be simply this, right? How do we go about giving them like a grant in order to come to Washington, D.C.? I can give them internships here. That's not an issue. But getting them to have money while they're here is completely different, because access, I think, is just as important than money. That was my comment and question.
100%. I don't know how to answer your question, but I think you've asked the right one. And, you know, someone cleverer than I who understands flows of money and, you know, whose pocket to pick. But if you can pay their freight and find a way for them to live here where they can afford for 3 months, 6 months, and then they walk away with a letter of recommendation, you've changed their lives.
And we do have small programs here in DC called DC Scholars,
Yes.
where they get paid their dollars for staying in a certain place, as well as get internships, et cetera, as they're here. So we do have that on a small scale. It is about how do we get the dollars, especially now when we are facing $375 million cut from the state, as well as not knowing what's going to happen with our Pell and our Title V. So we had a question in the background, but thank you for the question. Saul Jimenez Sandoval, President of Fresno State.
Hi, Fresno State. My campus has an 84% non-white population. We have about 65% of my students on Pell Grant. 85% of my students are on financial aid. And my question is the following. For us, DEI is not a theoretical concept. It's a lived experience of all of my students who have parents who work in the fields or who have parents who work really hard so that they can make a good education at Fresno State. What do we do with DEI moving forward when it is within our DNA to be diverse? It is within our DNA to be people of color. And it's within our DNA to celebrate each other in a way that educates the population as to what America actually looks like in my region and most of California.
Boy, that's a tough question. Look, DEI has become nomenclature. It's become a football. It's become a shadow of its true self. That said, if you look at where DEI money is spent, it is predominantly, and I keep coming back to this theme, it is predominantly at elite universities. Why? Because that's where the problem is, right? DEI was meant, like affirmative action, to figure out a way for highly selective universities to open up their doors to first-generation Black, Hispanic, Native American students, and DEI was meant to keep them there and get them accommodated and comfortable so that they could thrive. You all do it anyway, because you're not that selective. You're not saying to somebody who comes from a, working class high school, sorry, you just don't have the grades, you don't have the test scores. You're opening your doors. You look like your communities.
That's it.
I don't know why anyone would go after your DEI other than spite, right? You're not spending that much money on it. You don't really need it in the sense that you're already doing what DEI is meant to do. And I just think you're in a terrible position, and I feel bad, and I don't know how to, what to say about that, because you all don't deserve what you're getting.
I also think it's about who we serve. We're serving our communities. And it's not the words, it's serving the people that we are entrusted to serve by the state of California, which is the citizens of California. So we do the work in educating the people that come to learn with us and continue to ensure that they become successful, because that is going to, as we heard on the Hill today, it's about workforce and building communities and building economy. Well, that's who we have in our communities, and we have to build the workforce and build our communities and lift our economy by the people that lived in our neighborhoods. And that's the way I would go after it. So, Paul, we could talk for hours.
We could.
But we have to stop. I want to say thank you for doing the work you do and understanding who we are as the CSU is a regional comprehensive, the most influential system in the country, where we are serving 461,000 students who are diverse and going out into the workforce, that you are really representing the work that we do and that you advocate for us. Please join me in giving Paul a round of applause.
And let me say, as I said, the CSU system, your individual colleges do awfully well in the Washington Monthly. There's not much higher you can go, but I think under Dr. Garcia, you're going to go higher.
So to everyone in this room, I think you heard your work matters, regardless of what your positionality is in our institutions. You are being heard through the CSU voice as a national model in this country. No, we're not perfect, but nobody's ever perfect. And we are moving and striving to lift. And what you have to remember every day, because I know you do, is that you are contributing to all of those students that cross that stage and go on to do better because of you. You should be proud of the work you do, because they're going out, lifting communities, going across the country in professions, doing the work that we do, representing the CSU. You heard about the judge tonight, a proud alum of San Jose State. And there are so many alums that we saw last night, proud alums who are going across the country doing the work because of all of you. So remember that. And as you continue the federal message, let's go through the 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 1, shore up funding and save the Pell Grant. That's number 1. Number 2, support minority serving institutions. The CSU by far serves bachelor's degrees and builds the economic engine and social mobility for diverse students better than any other system in this country. So we have to support Title V and minority serving institutions. 3, to support bipartisan legislation solution for dreamers and undocumented students. And finally, as they dismantle the U.S. Department of Education, we ask Congress to ensure competent, uninterrupted, and ongoing administration of critical educational funds, federal educational funds, designated for our institution. These are vital messages. Understand that 207,000 of our students receive Pell. Not getting Pell would mean stopping their dreams. So we need your voices. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to people who are powerful, talk to your legislators to push for us. And with this in mind, I want to say thank you, Paul Glastris, and thank you to all of you. And I turn it over to Jeff Cullen.